Our next request is from GameZ Jake, and it's for a Yu-Gi-Oh! Related fanfic that they apparently made. Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 Dragon Souls. First of all, this is something I have never done for a review before. Fanfiction is something that almost everyone has done at least once in their life, I myself included, and there's many different formats and styles they can be in. Many do them for fun or for creative experience. Either way, this isn't normally something I do for this show. Unlike most webcomics, not every work of fiction ends up having a major audience, and I don't want to discourage anyone from attempting to create something they might be proud of. If anything, I'm no fanfic critic that would know enough what's right or wrong. But, leading into the second thing, I am a fan of Yu-Gi-Oh! And I know my way around that series to where I can at least give this one a shot since the creator and patron asked for it. With how long it seems to be, and that it's still going, I'll cover as much as I can before I'll have to stop for the episode. Even in the time-displaced wine cellar I'm in, I have other things to work on. Anyway, based on the title of the fanfic, this seems to be in relation to Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5. This was the 4th spin-off series in the Konami-run Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime series, and I pretty much covered the entire series already, most of which is available in Daily Motion, while some are stuck behind copyright. I'll give you the lowdown. Arc 5 centers around an entertainment duelist named Yuya Sakaki, who aims to be like his father, who went missing years ago, and brings smiles to everyone around him. He discovers a new form of monster summoning that eventually is recreated by his rival, Reggie Akiba, and mass-produced for the public. But things start to get weird as people from other dimensions, including alternate versions of Yuya and his close friend Yuzu, invade their world as part of a large-scale multi-dimensional battle in one person's attempt to revive someone using the life force of the people. It led to cameos from past Yu-Gi-Oh! Series that are more original but still a neat nod, and plenty of creative duels along the way. I admit, it might have gotten a bit off track the further along it got, but I never considered this to be a bad series. The characters were still enjoyable, and the duels really were that entertaining. I think that if the series hadn't abided to Konami's need to introduce new concepts after a certain amount of card sets, the anime might have gone on longer to better iron out the story. Still, there were some things I wish they could have done to better celebrate the series proper, like better dedication to ritual monsters. It's funny to me how even though all the other special summon monsters got whole dimensions for themselves, ritual monsters were left out despite getting a nice visual upgrade at long last. Well, based on what I was told by the creator of this fanfic, they seemed to have done one themselves. So, let's take a look. Well, before anything, I should mention that it wasn't just GameZ Jake who wrote it, but also Respect Blindfolds. Otherwise, this was edited by Pink Penguin and Arya Sasaki. Various art credits are shown, meaning we'll get some occasional artwork. Oh, and they even have links to various opening and ending music to represent the different arcs they're covering. Like, the first opening is a cover of the Season 0 opening for Yu-Gi-Oh!
So here we go, we're walking on, side by side and arm in arm.
Honestly, I remember doing something like this for at least one of my Yu-Gi-Oh! Fanfics. Just describing the kind of opening music I have, but I'm not against it since we're not in the actual story yet. Speaking of, the Ritual Dimension arc seems to last from Chapter 1 to Chapter 17. Again, I don't know if I'll get that far, but we'll see. We open in a dark place far away from all other worlds. Within this dark space floats a 16-year-old boy with cyan hair and orange spiky bangs. Not sure what food he'd fall under in that one Arc 5 meme I've seen. I mean, if I know Arc 5 well enough, I assume this is going to be one of Zark's incarnations. The boy starts feeling pain as orange particles seem to drag him somewhere while also hearing someone crying for help. This might just be a dream, as everything goes white and we officially enter the first chapter. New world, new you. I tend to call the you protagonists that too. Anyway, the formatting seems to be in a scripted format, where they have descriptions of what is happening in the moment, how a character is acting, and then lines of dialogue with their associated name. I don't recall doing this myself back then, though for personal use I do this for review scripts. Right now, both the main you and whoever he's talking to are both given question marks in their names. Anyway, it seems our you for this story landed in some rocky mountains, and some man with a dragon by his side is harvesting some girl's spirit energy. Using a card he has, he senses the boy having a lot of it as well. And since this appears to be a world where monsters are real, he sticks a crawling dragon on the boy, only for the you to be struck from behind by another girl, or the same one, and it's Yuzu? Yuya? We went over this the last time I covered the series. They might have the same face, but their hair and clothes should give it away that it's not them! Also, if she's 16, meaning this is 2 years later, you would think she would know better after being reincarnated in the end. Either way, the boy decides to take her and run. Much to her confusion, since even I know she's not the kind to run away that easily. Of course, he tricks the crawling dragon by making it seem like they're jumping off a cliff, but instead goes under to tackle the cloaked man. And I guess that's enough for him, since he leaves while breaking a ring he dropped, which was controlling the dragon. The boy gets knocked out by Yuzu, since he did a reckless thing, and when he wakes up, she tries getting answers from him. The boy claims he doesn't know anything about himself, so she decides to call him Yu, while introducing herself as Yuzu. The next morning, she offers to take Yu toward a city called Domino, and I guess that's the end of the chapter, since we have the next one called Bizarre Bazaar. Part 1. I kinda wish these had Chapter 1 or whatever. But anyway, they find a market where people and duel monsters are, and they're hoping to get a new duel disc since her last one broke. One of the vendors is literally called Freaky Fish Guy.
I am not a freaky fish guy!
Anyway, feeling hungry, they want to buy fish, but you don't spend money, you gotta win a duel. Luckily, there's a rental place for those nearby, and you only have to win a duel before market closes to keep it. Awfully generous, considering how expensive these things are in most series. In fairness, these ones seem to be cheaply made, so I guess it's fine. Yuzu finds one she likes, but Yu, wanting something nicer, ends up finding a fortune teller who listens briefly to his story, which isn't very long, and she ends up giving him an official Ritual Dimension duel disc. You know, Yuzu hasn't mentioned about what this world is, and I find it weird that they would describe this duel disc like that when it has yet to be established in story for either character or reader. Of course, it seems like we're really rushing this out quite a bit. I mean, the opening and space thing is fine, but to go from that to being attacked by someone with a living duel monster, to saving an established series character, and then come here without getting too deep into who she is, or what this world is to help the main character, like, you have time to do a bit more fleshing out, because otherwise it seems like we're skipping details. Moving on, someone with insect hair steals Yuzu's duel disc, that's already broken, and it turns out to be a fictional version of Weevil Underwood. And based on what he claims, he apparently replicated what the Duel Monsters version of him did, and had Parasite snuck into her deck so he can win. Even then I'd call bullcrap, because even Yuzu wouldn't lose that easily. Either way, Yu challenges him to a duel, since if he doesn't accept, that just proves that Weevil had to cheat to win. Okay. Even Weevil finds his argument flawed, but decides to go along with it like the arrogant jerk he is. As the duel begins, and we enter a new chapter, Yu is surprised to see cards he isn't familiar with. Of course, as many fan writers would do for this kind of series, they use original cards like this one to try and make them match with their characters. Unlike real cards, where it's easier to tell if they're balanced or not, These ones may or may not be that simple, and even then, the card game continually evolves and things phase in and out of playability all the time. At least here I can see why Yuzu might have lost, because Weevil has a fusion card for insects and he uses it to bring out a perfect insect queen moth. And I guess despite this being a ritual dimension, even the common people don't use rituals that much. Then again, if this ritual is meant to be based on the Duel Monster series, where fusion and ritual were prominent, it might make sense to still have fusions so long as they're in the minority. It's the first duel of the story, so I can cut it some slack. Speaking of rituals though, Yu, whose deck seems to be based on Restrict Shaman monsters, uses a ritual spell to bring out Restrict Shaman of Blazing Flames. And while he may not be like Yuya, he still seems to share part of his belief that duels bring people together. Using mage power and an effect of his own monster, he defeats the amalgamation fusion bug. Weevil attempts to bring it back again, except Yu's monster prevents fusion summoning. And I guess Weevil ran out of cards to use, so he loses. Oh, and I guess Freaky Fish Guy wasn't actually Mako, as he's actually his stepbrother, named Root. Mako does show up to offer them a place to stay. Since this place wouldn't have the parts needed to fix Yuzu's dual disc, they'll really need to get to Domino City, which they offer to take the 2 in the morning. But someone is watching them, wanting to ensure they don't get away. Later, the group travels the sea on a fortress whale, which has a submarine on top instead of a fortress. As they go to sleep, Yuzu looks at a photo she has of a bit from the ending song, Dashing Pendulum, where it has the photo of Yuya and Yuzu with their respective counterparts. Although, this was merely a what-if kind of scenario, since by this point, Yuri was still an antagonist, while the girls were all captured by Leo for his Revival Zero plan. And by the end of Arc 5, all of Yuya's counterparts merge into him, while the girls merge with Yuzu. Maybe this flashback will explain it. It starts with Yuya and Yuzu showing up to the Leo Institute for a Lancer coronation. There's a memorial hall for all the Lancers and their allies, and Yudo and Yuri are here? Okay, maybe we aren't getting an explanation for this. At this point, I guess it just boils down to original continuity, separate from what was even established in canon. Oh, and it's not just them, even all of Yuzu's counterparts are here. Anyway, as Reggie says, this isn't just about appointing new Lancers. Apparently, the dimensions are becoming unstable since the Arc 5 reactor shut down, and now there are 3 new ones that were discovered. Now, while I do enjoy the idea that there are multiple dimensions based on certain summon types and series, the only problem I have would be the relevance they have to what caused it. In the beginning, there was only one dimension that was high-tech, believed that dual monsters had souls or whatever, and then when Zark and his dragons went on a rampage, Rei Akuba used her power to seal them away. Each dimension would be based on the summon type Zark's dragons embodied, meaning it would be Fusion, Xyz, Synchro, and, at the time, Standard, before that became Pendulum. These would be based on extra deck monsters, so it made some sense that Ritual was left out because that's a main deck type of monster. Granted, it was still different from normal and effect monsters that it should have been given more attention. So, if they're going this route of introducing worlds based on other summon types or series, as besides this one, I imagine one of them is based on Vrains and League summoning, they'd have to be loose references to their canon counterparts, but still separate from Zark and the Dimension Split incident. Anyway, Reggie appoints the new team, Lancers 5, with all the you boys and girls, plus Shun, and someone named Takuma? Wait, could he be based on Sayo Takuma? Maybe not, since Sayo looked to be older than 18. Either way, I don't know what prompted Reggie to bring him along, especially when Takuma steps up and says, "I can't accept it, because I can never work with a person that shouldn't exist."
Wait a minute! Who are you?
He then uses some kind of device to create strange humanoids that multiply, and the boy's mother says that they're doing this as part of their plan to gather everyone here, so they can suck people into different dimensions. Yuya tries to keep Yuzu safe, but they too get separated. Yuzu would end up in this dimension, found by a Hitatsumi giant, who seems to think she's from the Outer Realms, which would probably explain why there are more worlds besides the main four, but the flashback ends before we can learn more. Yuya, this is all my fault. If only Why would it be your fault? Unless you invited this complete stranger with strange powers, I don't see why getting separated would be your fault. Anyway, the submarine gets pulled up by some mysterious ships, who warp you and Yuzu onto their vessel and introduce themselves as poachers of duel monsters. They apparently want to recruit these two since they're human, but now I really have to wonder how this world works in relation to the Duel Monsters series. They also recognize you as someone from the Spirit Reservation, meaning it's something you lost memory of before this. But before they can apprehend him, they get attacked by Seven Roads Magician, cut away through! Huh? Okay, now we're getting a bit crazy here. This is a monster from Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s, the first of currently 2 spin-off anime centered around Rush Duels, which is Konami's attempt to reinvigorate the game with a new dedicated Rush system and cards to match. The plot of 7s involves a kid named Yuga Odo, who in an attempt to fight against a capitalist-run society that heavily regulates duel monsters, invents rush duels to entertain himself and others with simpler rules versus what master duels have. This would later be followed by Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush, which centers around a space alien fleeing with his people from a war and resides on Earth, while learning about rush duels. I guess you can say it introduces a new summon type, Maximum Summon, which is like having 3 cards for a single monster with benefits. It's still weird to see it here because of different rules and such. At least it doesn't seem like Yuga is here, but someone called the 7th King. He uses his monster to destroy the dual disc jammer, preventing our heroes from escaping with monsters, and then you, hearing a mysterious voice to draw a card, does so and brings out his Dimension Dragon, Scarmaker Ritual Dragon. I've never heard of such a card. Must be worth a lot though. I mean, you can say that about a lot of cards that get introduced in anime, yet someone has to produce them. That paper didn't just materialize from nothing. The dragon refers to him as Yuichi Makoto, and together with the 7th King, they all escape. Next, we have the Valley of the Samurai, and now we see that Scarmaker can assume a chibi form, kinda like in Shaman King where spirits can assume a small form, and talk to Yuichi. Apparently, Yuichi had lost his memories around 2 years ago. Also, his friends left him alone with his spirit partner as they went on ahead to look around. Kinda dickish, but I guess when your partner is a large dragon on par with the other dimension dragons, I suppose they can afford to leave them alone for a while. The two start looking for them, only to be attacked by someone, named Erasure, who uses a scythe against Yuichi. However, as it begins to rain, they are approached by this story's version of Misawa, only it's his dub name, Bastion. I see you found another victim in your hunting game. So, what if I did? No duelist can defeat me. I'm invincible. Sounds like a challenge to me. But no, Bastion decides to use a monster he has called Froststorm Dragon to freeze him in place. He leads our hero to safety while believing that his friends are in this samurai village looking for directions to Domino City. He also seems to know about Yuya, as he also mistakes Yuichi for him. For a genius, you're still a dummy. How's your tiger Amazon girlfriend doing, by the way? He's not the only one, though, as Gogenzaka appears and also mistakes our hero for Yuya. Does no one ever look at the hair and clothes? If anything, Gogenzaka sees Yuichi as one of Yuya's counterparts, and at this point I don't think I'll really question the logistics behind Zark being split into more than 4 U's, since we're already this far in. Anyway, we learn from Tsukikage, referred by his dub name Moonshadow, that his friends were captured by the 6 Samurai tribe and have to go rescue them. Of course, they already sent ninjas to find Yuichi, so he and Bastion get taken to see the Grand Master of the Six Samurai, who tells them he needs their help, and if they refuse, they'll do something to Yuzu and the king. In a bit of an abrupt moment, he says that he needs their help fighting the super heavy samurai kingdom on the other side of the city and to face their army. But then Yuichi is like, we didn't see any army down here. And the Grandmaster is like, I see, you're their army. Like, 2 duelists would not equal an army. Unless this is a Warriors game, then you might count as such. And what kind of information do you have to think they were even with the army to begin with? Well, since he's an idiot, he challenges Yuichi to a duel to prove they weren't lying. Since this is against an actual duel monster, they will play with Deckmaster rules. That's fair and all, though I still have to question this world and its relation to ritual summoning. Going back to Arc 5 proper, the dimensions outside the Pendulum one were based on the locations set by the respective series. Fusion had architecture found in GX, Synchro with 5Ds, and Exceeds with Zale. No matter what, they all relied on the prominent summon type that makes up that dimension. Not to mention, there were some theming involved with what characters did or what humans do with their society to better match with those summon types. Ritual, while based on duel monsters, seems to adopt the spirit world design from the Doma arc, while incorporating the Deckmaster system from the Virtual World arc. But so far, only Yuichi has shown to use ritual monsters in some capacity. Plus, it doesn't seem like this society would incorporate rituals in any form of their life, so it doesn't quite match up to the theme of this dimension. But for all I know, this might not even be the ritual dimension after all, and I've been under the false assumption that it was. Anyway, like in the Virtual World arc, a Kuribo, or rather Ragdoll Kuribo in this case, pops out of the deck to volunteer as Yuichi's Deckmaster. He rolls with it as the duel begins, and of course, the Grandmaster runs a Six Samurai deck. Six Samurai are one of those decks that are incredibly broken to fight against, and they only get more broken as time goes on and more support is made for them. I wouldn't be surprised if this guy had one of the extra deck variants in this ritual dimension. And yeah, I know that during Season 2, at least 2 of the Synchro antagonists used fusion monsters, but there it made sense because they were working with the fusion dimension in some shape or form. Generally, there's a reason why characters normally native to one dimension would end up using something else because of story reasons. In what might be a similar case, this guy has original Pendulum monsters that he uses to bring out a powerful level 10 monster. Also, because of how Pendulum monsters work, he uses one of them to negate Yuichi's compulsory evacuation device. Wait, so they're spells and monsters? Yes, but they're technically monsters first and only count as spells while in play. And okay, I guess he would be surprised if he hasn't seen anyone from the Pendulum dimension duel yet. Oh, and of course, as Yuichi loses life points, the ground below the hostages starts to disappear. It's one of those games, of course. And Yuichi seems to give up rather easily, though I would too if your opponent locks down your field like this. Of course, Ragdoll Kuribo intercepts a direct attack, thus allowing Yuichi to fight back with a Level Eater Kuribo, which destroys a monster it attacks as long as it's at least 5 levels higher, while also setting its own level to that of the destroyed monster. Okay, I know I've done my fair share of original cards that weren't really balanced, but this is particularly a bit much, especially for a Kuribo. Also, the next ritual monster our hero uses, Restrict Shaman of Blustering Winds, seems to prevent pendulum summons from happening. While I get that these monsters are like Yuzuku's Code Talker monsters, which tend to be similar in design but have different effects, it seems like these monsters are only situational for duels like these that rely on a single summon type. And how do you already have a monster that counters pendulum monsters? I can't imagine you being any different from Bastion since this is also the first time facing one. Then again, if he lost his memories and this is his original deck from 2 years ago, then maybe this is left over from before the memory wipe. Either way, the Grandmaster loses patience and decides to just cancel the duel and try to seize them. However, Gongenzaka returns with Big Benkei, who claims that both sides were being tricked by the ninjas from earlier, who were apparently working for both sides. They don't know why they were causing anarchy among the civilians, but that's enough to let our heroes go. As the gang reunites, Gongenzaka says he'll stay behind to help get the city back together. Bastion decides to come along since they do need party members. After they leave, the 3 ninjas that were captured are approached by Erasure, who we now see looks like this. And, you know, that's fair. The 5Ds manga had a literal skeleton knight who looked like this, so I can accept a character who would look similar to that. Anyway, 2 more chapters before I have to call it, and it features what I guess is the equivalent to how, in Arc 5, each dimension had a little introduction related to the kind of world they have. I'm guessing this is where we finally get an explanation to this world, since the description says it's a world like no other, where dual monsters and humans coexist. Anyway, this chapter is called Simple Chemistry, which has Bastion explain how he was a student at Duel Academy. Until the year 2007, the current year is 2177, according to the others, and while Bastion acts surprised he's been living that long, he thinks that he was given eternal life. How? Why? I want to know, but Yuzu smacks Yuichi and the 7th King before we can find out because they were dumb to believe that excuse. She also acts up because I guess she thinks Bastion would be from the Fusion Dimension Duel Academy that started the Dimension War from that series, and Yuichi tries to calm them down and he glows red for a moment. Then, the next morning, Bastion is gone and our heroes get attacked by a red-eyes black dragon controlled by Joey Wheeler? He's after Yuichi, possibly because of something that happened in the past that he wouldn't remember now. Yuichi tries challenging him, but it's no use. Joey has Red Eye's attack and scorch his ass. It doesn't kill him, though Bastion does return, having been injured by him earlier, and decides to challenge him to a duel proper. The others help Yuichi, while Bastion uses the latter's duel disc for himself. At first, Bastion seems to run the same sort of chemical deck he had in GX, while Joey has cards themed around Red Eyes. Of course, Joey still has the same gamble-based cards he's known for, while Bastion has a card that can change a monster's attribute based on their current type. I would think that maybe DNA transplant would work best because you can choose what you want, unless this is just a normal trap. It might to help come up with after chapter card guides to help better understand what these cards do. But here we go. Joey actually uses a ritual summon for a monster called Red Eye's Inferno Dragon. I would have expected Lord of the Red, but then again, I don't think Red Eye's Black Dragon had a proper ritual monster similar to what Blue Eye's White Dragon has. Its roar is so loud that Yuzu had to cover her ears. 7th King seems to speak like he was all static and distorted. I wonder what that's about. After he disappears, much to Yuzu's confusion, Bastion is left in a corner. Maybe he'll turn this around in this next one. He brings out Water Dragon Cluster and manages to take out Joey's monster with ease. But when it's Joey's turn, he looks at his hand and smirks sinisterly. Yeah, I wouldn't call that sinister. That's just him referencing Antonio Inoki, a Japanese wrestler with a huge chin. Anyway, he brings out normal Red Eyes and uses that to revive his earlier monster. And because Bastion didn't think to use Cluster's quick effect to bring out 2 water dragons to try and shield himself, he just loses the one monster. He does use it as part of a ritual spell that uses monsters from the grave, though that still doesn't excuse the lack of proper defenses. Anyway, now we get the proper summon of Froststorm Dragon, with power strong enough to take on Joey's monster. And in a move that is unlike him at all, Joey has his monster attack Yuzu. Now I really have to wonder what the hell is up with this universe's characters. Yuichi finally wakes up and we get a proper look at what he looks like and not too bad. Got like a scar over his eye and some familiar clothing, but not bad. He used his power to save Yuzu from the attack, though he wasn't sure how that happened. Bastion, in the meantime, finishes the duel. Yuichi begins remembering more about himself, and the last thing being the Kaiba Corp Grand Prix. While Joey is confused as to how and why the person he claims to hate doesn't remember anything, he just decides to leave since he can't forgive him for something. Afterwards, Bastion apologizes to Yuzu for earlier, as he didn't see her point of view of what Duel Academy did, despite his being different. Anyway, the 7th King returns as mysteriously as he left. Even Yuzu questions what he did, and he claims to went for help. In the meantime, Joey and his gang mope over the recent defeat when suddenly a mysterious duelist appears before them. He's got a bit of spiky armor over him, and what appears to be one of those Eye of Anubis marks, while saying that his name is Takuma. Oh, like the guy who started this whole mess, it seems. Okay, I really have to stop here because there's so much left, and after about 70 pages or so, it's kind of gotten exhausting. Again, I don't want to discourage anyone from wanting to create fan fiction for things they like. There is some level of compassion in place, since they're willing to create original art in some spots for their original characters or existing ones, and some desire to expand upon a series that many aren't as fond of as others. It's just really easy for me to get all up on the lore and story whenever things don't quite make sense in this form. Like, the main problem I have ties into how fast-paced the fanfic seems to be. There doesn't seem to be a lot of time used to better elaborate on certain details or develop the story in ways that make sense. Yuzu not taking time to tell Yuichi about herself or where she came from when it would be convenient to. Introductions to pre-existing characters that somehow know about other pre-existing characters and not going over them, and okay, there has to be some bit of mystery left over. Not everything has to be spelt out for the reader's sake. It's about knowing when to reveal something or when to withhold information according to what you think the characters would do in each moment. That's also even when considering how elements from Arc 5 are changed for the benefit of this story. Having the U boys and girls not merged together and be in the same world? Fine. I dig the idea of them all being good buddies, especially if Yuri is going to be more like his manga counterpart, where he's more of a troll than a malicious villain. And of course, I dig wanting to explore other possible dimensions, whether they may or may not be tied to the original cause of the dimension split. But again, this is why I'm reluctant to really go into covering fanfics. A lot of them are from the mindset of wanting to create and expand on things you really like. And also for many, it's usually their first piece of literature that might not be intended for publication and the like, especially given the messy grammar later on and inconsistent descriptors. If anything, I do think a good story is possible here, but so far from what I've read, it needs more refinement and fleshing out. It can't just all be fan service, which is ironic given what Arc 5 has, but the original parts should still have more prominence and stand on their own. I don't mind covering more of this just to see what happens. Otherwise, I can only be honest and say that it's a fair attempt. Not bad, not good, but a fair attempt to expand the Arc 5 universe. Next time, we look at another foreign animated movie involving fox spirits. I'll see you then.